The CCP's fourth plenum hasn't even begun, and China is already in a civil war. Faith is locked down, petitioners are seized, black money flees, hospitals shut their doors, 95-year-olds are surveilled, pastors are taken away, overseas students are pulled into money laundering webs, and doctors switch to food delivery. Four fronts fracture at once, a regime's fear spins out of control. Don't miss the next drop, subscribe and enable the bell. Just as the countdown to the CCP's fourth plenum begins, 4 political time bombs went off in China at the same time. Faith locked down, speech gagged, healthcare collapsing, and black money fleeing. No guns or bullets, yet it's a real civil war. In Shanghai, a 95-year-old woman is monitored 24/7 just for seeking compensation for her demolished home. In Beijing, a pastor is taken away in the middle of the night for leading believers in prayer. In the United States, overseas students' bank accounts have become nodes in the CCP's $300 billion money laundering web, and across the country, hospitals are falling one by one, with doctors turning to food delivery. These aren't 4 isolated stories but a chain reaction of power run amok. The CCP's fourth plenum hasn't opened, yet all of China is already fighting simultaneously: political war, faith war, money war, medical war. Today, we'll help you see these 4 smokeless wars clearly. Each one is reshaping the destinies of hundreds of millions. Before the fourth plenum, Shanghai's stability maintenance oddities exposed. In China, whenever an important meeting is approaching, petitioners are the ones who suffer. This time it's the CCP's 20th Central Committee fourth plenum, scheduled for October 20th in Beijing. But before the date even arrived, Shanghai's Pudong New area had already switched on stability maintenance mode. The next 2 stories will make your skin crawl, and may seem unbelievable. The first is about 95-year-old Lu Shuzhen. She only wants her home back, yet she is monitored around the clock. Petitioner Lu Shuzhen of Shanghai's Pudong is a 95-year-old woman with disabilities. Her home was demolished during the relocations for the 2005 World Expo. She received no compensation and no resettlement. For 20 years she has petitioned, just to get her home back. 22 years later, she is still renting, mired in debt. Her daughter, Cui Fufang, says that starting on the first workday after this year's Mid-Autumn Festival, October 9th, the neighborhood committee sent 4 people who rented the room next to Lu's in a small guesthouse called Qingchun Inn, to monitor her 24 hours a day without a break. This isn't the first time. Back in 2020, because Lu delivered petition materials, the police carried her into a detention center. There was no detention notice, no legal procedures, the family received no paperwork. After release there was no proof of release, only that she was released on bail pending trial, with the local police station as the guarantor. Cui says that since her mother began defending her rights, the government has spent over 50 million yuan, RMB hereafter, on stability maintenance around her. 50 million. If they had simply compensated mother and daughter, the problem would have been solved, no need to drag it out for 20 years. Yet not a penny has been paid for her mother's demolished private property. The second story is the tragedy of Yu Zhonghuan and his daughter. To defend their rights, his wife died, his daughter was left disabled, and he himself was kidnapped multiple times. Yu, also a petitioner in Pudong, says that on the morning of October 11th, 4 unidentified individuals appeared at his front and back doors simultaneously. He says he now cannot even take his daughter, who has cerebral palsy, to see a doctor. He's blocked from leaving the house to pick up medication. Why? It goes back 3 years. His wife, Ping, was persecuted into suffering a stroke during their rights defense efforts and, after years in the hospital, died in grievance. Since then, the monitoring and suppression against Yu have intensified. 2 years ago, even though he had already arranged hospitalization for his daughter, the authorities still seized him and locked him in a black jail on Chongming Island. They robbed him of 5,000 yuan and his phone, took his house keys, entered his home, and took away 20,000 yuan he had prepared for his daughter's medical care, along with his computer and documents. Worst of all, they even kidnapped his daughter with cerebral palsy, sending her to a so-called care home for the disabled. She had previously been able to walk several kilometers, but after a few months there, she could barely walk a few steps and had developed high blood pressure, heart disease, gastrointestinal problems, gallstones, and more. Yu says that while he was in the black jail he begged, "Could you transfer me somewhere closer to the city? If my daughter has a medical emergency, I could rush over to sign." He was refused. The monitors later forced him to sign a power of attorney stating, "You agree to have your daughter sent to a care home." He refused and was beaten. They made him read a scripted line into a phone camera. When he refused, his ribs were broken. Even worse, under the banner of stability maintenance, they're chasing profits. You says that every time there's a major CCP event, 2 sessions, party congress, petitioners are maintained, with fees ranging from 5,000 to 50,000 yuan per person. If a family has 2 petitioners, the stability maintenance team can pocket 100,000 yuan. Note that this money isn't spent on the petitioners. Some sources say the central government allocates 500,000 yuan per petitioner per year to localities. Most of it is embezzled by local officials, funding black jails, kidnappings, and illegal detentions, with kickbacks along the way. This is the CCP's stability maintenance, using the people's money to surveil and mistreat the people. Petitioners like Liu Shuzhen and Yu Zhonghuan are not rare. There are tens of thousands across China. They only seek justice, yet the CCP treats them as unstable factors, dragging family members into suffering as well. Every CCP meeting is the start of a nightmare for petitioners. If you feel their plight shouldn't be silenced, please share this video and give it a like, so more people will know. There are those in this world who must pay a price even to speak. A nationwide roundup of China's underground church. The CCP doesn't only suppress petitioners, anyone who won't obey can become a target. Next is the house church Christians who quietly worship in China. A major incident has occurred, starting October 9th, across many regions. A large-scale roundup of underground churches began, targeting one of China's largest house churches, Zion Church. So far, more than 30 people have been detained, including pastors, preachers, and ordinary congregants. Some have been detained, some are missing, meeting places have been sealed and property confiscated. People ask, what crime did they commit? The answer is chilling: they only wanted to worship God. According to Rights Protection Network and church statements, these pastors and believers were illegally seized and detained for peacefully gathering, preaching the Bible, caring for their communities, and supporting one another. In China, any church that doesn't submit to the authorities and register can be treated as an illegal organization. Their only crime is refusing to have their faith censored. This crackdown isn't only in Beijing and Shanghai, but also in Zhejiang, Shandong, Guangdong, Hainan, and even far-off Guangxi. Clearly, this is a nationwide, centrally coordinated campaign. At the center is senior pastor Jean Mingri, Ezra Jean, one of the founders of this largest underground church. In recent years, prayer meetings he led drew tens of thousands, deeply troubling the authorities. As early as 2018, when the CCP began a comprehensive crackdown on house churches, Jean was put on an exit control list and barred from leaving China. His daughter, Grace Jean Drexel, is a U.S. Senate staffer now living in Washington. She hasn't seen her father in 6 years. Grace says her father knew he could be arrested but chose to remain because, as a pastor, he felt he couldn't run when his flock suffered. She choked up. Her father has long been prepared. In the early hours of the 10th, police raided Jin's residence in Beijing. That evening, he was detained at his home in Beihai, Guangxi. That night, church leaders in at least 5 other provinces were also taken or went missing. You may ask, why start arresting now? Because during the pandemic, when official churches were closed, Zion Church continued holding online prayer, attracting even more people. Reportedly, the church grew from 1,500 members in 2018 to 5,000 today, spanning 40 cities and hundreds of prayer points, some in karaoke rooms, restaurants, or apartments. This grassroots growth, unapproved and uncontrolled, is precisely what the CCP fears most. Thus, since early 2025, branches in these cities have been repeatedly investigated and congregants interviewed. By October, a full crackdown arrived. Insiders say interrogations focus on 3 pastors, Jean Mingri, Wang Lin, and Yin Huibin, probing their daily activities and church operations to build cases for charges such as illegally using information networks, illegal business operations, and fraud. Zion Church issued statements on the 9th, 10th, and 11th, calling on the government to immediately stop arrests, threats, and harassment against their church and house churches nationwide, to unconditionally release all detained and missing pastors and believers, and to safeguard citizens' basic right to religious freedom according to law. The roundup quickly drew international attention. U.S. media including the Wall Street Journal and the AP ran stories. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio called it hostility toward Christians. He publicly stated, "We urge the Chinese Communist Party to immediately release detained church leaders and allow all people of faith, including house church members, to practice their religion without fear of retaliation." Whether the CCP heeds international calls is, of course, another matter. Pastor Jin's story is not only a portrait of religious persecution. Across China, countless pastors and believers like him are being persecuted, simply because of faith. Chinese students used as money mule couriers, $300 billion in black funds flow into the U.S. Faith is suppressed, speech silenced, and another silent transfer of money is spreading through the financial system. No army, no bullets, just overseas students' bank accounts. Imagine you're a Chinese student in Boston, 22 years old. Your parents pay your tuition, but rent is tight. One day an acquaintance says, "I've got a small favor, help me move some money. It's legal. I'll pay you $500. You hesitate, then agree. Over the next week, your bank account suddenly heats up. Every day strangers deposit a few hundred, dozens of small transfers flood in. You forward the money to another account via Zelle or by check. It looks as normal as splitting a dinner bill with friends. But unknown to you, behind it all is a transnational laundering operation exceeding $300 billion. The CCP's underground laundering network exposed. According to a report by former U.S. intelligence officer Charles Davis, the U.S. Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, recently reported. From 2020 to 2024, there were more than 137,000 suspicious activity reports linked to Chinese money laundering networks, CMLNs, involving over $312 billion. Where did the money come from? Primarily drug cartels. How is it laundered? How do funds move without crossing borders? Chinese students, retirees, homemakers, people seemingly unrelated to drugs, are drawn into a secret method called mirror transfers. This resembles the Middle Eastern hawala system: no banks, no transfers, no official records. Example: a Mexican cartel has piles of dollars and wants to avoid banks. A Chinese buyer wants dollars but is limited to $50,000 per year. A Chinese laundering network connects them. How? The cartel hands cash to a student in the U.S., simultaneously, a buyer in Guangzhou hands renminbi to a local broker. Thus dollars stay in the U.S., renminbi stay in China, yet the funds are mirrored in transfer, no wire, no record, untraceable. A silent financial war. You might think, isn't this just a few students being used? No, this is systemic penetration. These Chinese laundering networks don't use a handful of people but hundreds or thousands of students, clean accounts, operating in clusters, sharing device IDs, synchronizing transactions. These ordinary accounts look like day-to-day microtransactions but are in fact carefully designed, distributed laundering platforms. From a bank's perspective, they look like splitting Uber rides, sharing rent, or dividing meal costs. Zoom out, and you see an organized assault on the U.S. financial system. The consequence in one word: poison. Once laundered, funds flow into real estate and crypto, and further support drug trafficking. Every dollar washed through student mules extends the fentanyl supply chain's life. And it's not only students, many people don't even realize they've become nodes. Worse, the system casts suspicion on entire immigrant communities and university circles, making even legitimate transfers suspect to banks. What's the remedy? Ban student accounts? Shut cross-border flows? No. The fix isn't blanket blocking but smarter detection. Banks must spot behavior patterns behind transactions, device locations, transaction velocity, sudden surges. Government must coordinate across enforcement, intelligence, and finance, no more siloed work. Most importantly, don't let this network keep growing in the dark. This covert financial war isn't just about China or drugs. It's about, is the financial system safe? Will ordinary people be collateral damage? Are overseas students the next target group? If you think this deserves wider attention, please like and share, because you never know whether the next person pulled into a mirror transfer scheme will be someone you know. China's healthcare earthquake. If there's one shock that hits every ordinary Chinese person, it's this: not the ground shaking, but hospitals collapsing one after another. In 2025, China's healthcare sector is undergoing an unprecedented earthquake. This isn't a metaphor or exaggeration, it's a true systemic breakdown. In this nationwide storm, the fate of 13 million medical workers is being rewritten. Private hospitals in avalanche-style closures. In recent years you may have heard about the boom in private hospitals, hot capital pouring in, buildings sprouting everywhere, brands multiplying, market share expanding. By 2025, the bubble burst, and loudly. In Shantou, Guangdong, Guorui Hospital, once touted as Eastern Guangdong's largest Grade A private hospital, became a ruin after billions invested. Chengdu Minsheng Gospel ENT Hospital filed for bankruptcy in June after only a few years. In Beijing, Shanghai, Tangshan, Xi'an, Liaocheng, almost every city has people saying, "Our hospital has shut down." Statistics show that in just the first half of this year, hundreds of private hospitals were deregistered, closed, or bankrupt, from third-tier towns to first-tier metropolises, a comprehensive rout. Why? They couldn't hold on, the money ran out. Once financing stopped, the chain broke and the system collapsed. Trust eroded amid over-marketing and ethics controversies, and patients voted with their feet. Reckless expansion without professional management, land grabs turned into cash-outs. The golden age of private healthcare is over, leaving a mess, and a large cohort of medical staff suddenly unemployed. 60% of public hospitals in the red, mergers for survival. Some say, it's fine, public hospitals will hold the line. Unfortunately, that's wrong. Caixin reports that in Q1 2025, more than 60% of public hospitals were loss-making. What does that mean? It means, Luoyang No. 3 Hospital merged into Luoyang No. 1, two maternity hospitals in Hangzhou combined to form a new women's and children's hospital, two county hospitals in Huqiu, Anhui, huddled for warmth. These mergers aren't upgrades, they're survival moves. Pressures are multifold: a cliff-edge birth rate drop slashing patients for OB/GYN and pediatrics, tighter medical insurance cost controls limiting revenue, rising labor, supplies, and rent sending costs out of control, and patient flows concentrating at big centers, leaving grassroots hospitals empty. Even this former iron rice bowl is rusting. 13 million medical workers, struggling to survive the cave-in. Those hit hardest are frontline medical staff. They didn't hype bubbles or design capital schemes, yet they bear the brunt. Some are abruptly laid off, contracts voided, wages in arrears for months. Some see their seniority wiped clean and must start over at new institutions. Some are reassigned, or forced to change careers, from clinical work to admin, or even to food delivery. Once angels in white, now they only hope for stable social insurance and benefits. A chief physician at a top-tier hospital quipped bitterly in an interview, "I studied medicine for 8 years and worked 10 years of night shifts, now I'm weighing whether food delivery is more stable." Coldest of all, after closures, some hospitals provide no basic compensation, medical staff are last in line in debt liquidation. Healthcare should never be the first sacrifice. Hospitals aren't factories, doctors aren't assembly line workers. The healthcare closure wave of 2025 is a heavy alarm bell.